Good afternoon. I'm going to make these remarks in my national capacity as the permanent representative of the United Kingdom. The Security Council has just met to discuss Russia's continued assault on Ukraine 40 days into the war, including the harrowing images and reports that came out of Bucha at the weekend. President Zelensky also addressed the Council following his visit to Bucha yesterday. President Zelensky's reports of the destruction and torture Russian soldiers carried out on Ukrainian civilians were extremely harrowing. He told us about the men and women who were shot in the streets with their hands tied behind their backs. He told us that women had been gang raped, including in front of their children. That people had had their limbs cut off and their tongues cut out. That Russian tanks had crushed Ukrainian families who sat in their cars, unable to escape. He told us that there must be accountability for these crimes. The UK, as current President of the Council and as a committed partner of Ukraine, will not rest until that has happened. And you'll remember that we were the early supporters of the ICC inquiry, which is now going on, and we welcome the announcement today from the Secretary-General of an independent inquiry. Frankly, we found Russia blamed everyone else, but we've all seen the satellite images that show the bodies having been in Bucha for weeks. President Zelensky also called for the United Nations, the UN Security Council, and the international architecture to act on these war crimes and to reform if necessary. The United Nations was also clear. 11.3 million people have now been displaced. So we do need to investigate these crimes. And in his remarks, the Secretary-General set out the global consequences: rising food prices, more than 50 developing countries with more than 1.2 billion people affected by the ripple effects of this war. We need to silence the guns. We're all clear about that. Thank you.
President Zelensky, do you agree with him on the statement when he said that there is Security Council, but there is no peace in the world? And he even asked to remove Russia from the Security Council or to reconsider the mechanism of how the United Nations and Security Council works. Do you agree with this statement?
I think it's true that the Security Council was set up to protect peace and security in the world, and in the light of Russia's veto, we have been very restricted in our ability to act. I think it's very welcome that we've seen the General Assembly act so decisively, both to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine and also to call for humanitarian support. And we've seen that in those strong votes that you've seen with 141 and 140 countries. But we do need to make sure that now and in the future, the Security Council and the UN as a whole is able to respond to these sort of challenges. And that's why we're very strong supporters of the Secretary-General's common agenda, which will help drive through these reforms we need to see. Thank you.
Madam Ambassador, there seems to be a unanimous call for an independent investigation, not only in Bucha, but elsewhere in Ukraine. Can you perhaps talk about how soon that can happen and what the process is in that regard?
Well, the Secretary-General announced today that he had asked for an independent inquiry, but we know that Karim Khan, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, is already in Ukraine, and his team is already in the business of collecting evidence, and that's a very sophisticated and important part of this. So we very much welcome those developments. Thank you.
That's a pile of bloody lies, nothing new. That's a clear desire to twist the situation and the reality. And as my president said on several occasions, we are for the full independent investigation. We are not living in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. We are living in the 21st century where we have multiple high-tech means to verify the facts, including the satellite, forensics, and all other things.
Ambassador, President Zelensky failed the UN Security Council for preventing the war in Ukraine, but elsewhere, and he has given some examples, Syria, Afghanistan, and he called for a fair representation. Can the UN start, or can they start questioning the role of Russia, and how can they do it?
Well, the role of Russia is unquestionable. It's disastrous. I mean, that's a clear and a very effective immobilizer of, on the way of fulfillment by the Security Council of the mandate. So there is a need, and I think that one of the outcomes of this tragedy, of this war, should be a real and serious revision of the way the Security Council functions. And if the entire international community, it's not only about Ukraine, it's about the entire international community, if the entire international community can trust the Security Council as it is today with the security, you know, so there will be no switching to business as usual. Or if there is a switching to the business as usual, then, as my president said, this organization should dissolve itself.
Ambassador, the Russian ambassador has just told me that the video that was just played, that is all fake as well.
What can I say? Of course it's fake. Of course, in the Russian mind it is. But as I said, I bring you back to my reply to the first question.
But how do you counter this, the constant
I will
claims
not dignify the bunch and the torrent of lies. It is not my job to investigate and to verify. Ukraine is open to international investigation, all right? There are already satellite imagery. Satellites can read your text messages to your family on your smartphone. You know, so satellites are able to do everything.
What should be the next step of the UN ambassador?
Was that?
What should be the next step?
The next step will be the consideration of suspension of the Human Rights Council membership of the Russian Federation, which is an appalling tumor on the Human Rights Council, using the language of Comrade Nibenza.
Ambassador, is there a set date on the action in the General Assembly? And also, your president mentioned the creation of an alternative security architecture.
It's not the alternative security. I'm not sure that you're quoting properly. We can refer to the actual text, but the current security architecture as it stands is not capable to guarantee and provide security. That's a matter of fact, and you cannot deny it. So we must revisit the architecture, and we have to be responsible in setting up something that provides security to a Caribbean nation, to an African nation, to a Latin American nation, to a European nation, which happens, unfortunately, so far to be a neighbor to the Russian Federation. All right?
You're going to bring forward in the coming days with your colleagues?
No, it's a very comprehensive subject that should be discussed thoroughly, but the discussion should not be a repetition of a marathon, a September marathon in the General Assembly. It should be a very thorough discussion after the war.
As for the GA vote, do you have a date on that?
No, we don't have a date. We are working with the office of the PGA. We are working with the Secretariat of the General Assembly as well. We are in the process of consultations with many countries. We will not do it single-handedly. We're not doing it on our own or with a minimum number of countries. That will be a cross-regional action. All right?
Get the support you need to remove Russia from the Human Rights Council, Ambassador.
I really want to see the names of countries who believe that atrocities of the kind that Russia and its armed forces committing are compatible with the membership in the Human Rights Council. Really, I want to see that list of the countries. And I'm sure your constituents, your readers, your governments really want to see the list of these countries. Thank you.